So right now I'm in Lacey area at D-Trades Mobile Home Park. This place is pretty off the hook. Most of the spots I grew up in were pretty off the hook, but this one more personal because I lost my brother. He ended up killing himself at number 88, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. We had to stand off with law enforcement. I think there's like 5 different agencies that are involved, surrounded by a SWAT team. That was, it's a very, very surreal moment in my life, for sure. I got placed in the foster system in 1994 of April. Within my first year, I probably lived in at least 12 different foster homes within my first year, bounced around. My 2 little brothers, Jeremiah and Jesse, they were younger, like 1 or 2 years old, so it's easier to place a young child, and they got to stay together. That was awesome. My sister, she got to find a foster home. She got adopted.
In 1996, Washington's foster care system didn't just grow, it exploded. In a single year, the number of children in foster care surged to over 8,300. That's a jump of more than 20% practically overnight. This wasn't just a statistic. It was thousands of children removed from their homes, their schools, their lives. Now, methamphetamine was spreading rapidly across communities all across the West Coast and Midwest. It was cheap, addictive, and devastating. Parents disappeared into addictions. Homes became unsafe, and the system was forced to respond.
The unfortunate part is that when you talk about the foster care system or something like that, a lot of people didn't want to deal with children that had been exposed to meth labs because they didn't want to be exposed, right? They didn't want to have to worry about being exposed to what the meth effects were, didn't know enough about it. And you would get a lot of Child Protective Service people out there, and their job was just to try to find somebody that child could go to.
Sheriff Snazza, he'll always be a sheriff in my view, because John Snazza is a good individual and has compassion.
And later we were able to get the child endangerment law that I was fortunate enough to have the first child endangerment case in the state of Washington, where the person was held accountable for exposing her son to a meth lab.
By 1997, law enforcement officers entering clandestine meth labs frequently discovered young kids exposed to toxic fumes and dangerous environments, a silent epidemic of poisoning unfolding behind closed doors. When police raided these houses, the scenes were often heartbreaking. Officers and child welfare workers would remove children from homes contaminated by meth production, sometimes in the middle of the night. Those kids were placed into Washington's foster care system while the courts sorted out what would happen to their families. For many children in the 90s, the meth epidemic didn't just destroy their community. It took them out of their homes and changed the course of their childhoods forever.
We would get notified, at any time of day, and I got notified that there was a sibling group that needed a home, that there wasn't any food in the house, and that the parents had been cooking meth. So they came in, and right away we noticed that JD tended to be the more of a parent to his siblings than he was a kid. He would always hover over them, making sure they're doing okay, wanting to make sure that they weren't getting hurt or they were being kept safe. And but also, of course, he was a very angry child at the beginning because he'd been taken from his parents and from his home. So, I think that's very natural for any child being taken into care, that they're going to be angry.
I was really mad, disgruntled, anger at being in the foster care system, especially jumping around foster home, just being kicked around like you're trash. That's how I see it. And so, people always tell you that they're going to be involved in your life, they want to be there for you, but that's not the truth. Then you start getting more abandonment issues, and so you have a hard time trusting people and what they really have to say, because they say things but they don't really mean what they say.
JD loves loved his mom, and it was very evident. He would talk about her, and if there was something there that if he ever heard anything that was negative, he would stand up for her, and he's just always been that way. The whole time he was with us, he was very protective of his siblings, protective of his mom. You know, when he left us, it was very evident that he was very upset that he didn't get to go home to mom, but he was hopeful of the future, but you know, what went on from there, we never knew until later on.
A study by the Annie Casey Foundation in 2013 found that 50% of the homeless population spent time in foster care. For young men, the economic cost of the foster care to prison pipeline cost $5 billion a year.
So back in 1994, after being placed from foster home to foster home to foster home, I eventually got sent to Pierce County, Washington, east side of Tacoma. Right behind me was the first home of a foster home that took me in, which they had intentions to adopt me. We only stayed here for about a year, roughly, maybe a little more, then they ended up buying a home in Steilacoom, Washington, which we'll go there next. I was a young kid at the time. I didn't really understand what kind of community this was until later on in life. So, in a blessing, I'm glad that my adopted parents, we ended up being transferred to Steilacoom, which, being a rebel kid and just being lost, I could have easily been caught up in the gang life culture out here in Tacoma, Washington. So, in that regard, I'm appreciative of them not allowing me to grow up in this community, because we've seen how devastating it was back in the 90s and early 2000s. So when I got transferred from my foster parents' home, when they moved from east side of Tacoma to out here, this is where I stayed until I got removed. With him being in the military, it was all about physical therapy in regards to push-ups, decline push-ups, incline push-ups, having my hands out with big cans in my hand, holding them straight up. It's a good workout. And self-discipline and whatnot. And I looking back at it, it was good. But when you fall or you collapse, he'd pick you up and he'd force you to do push-ups, slam in the face against the ground, kicking my ribs, slapping me in the face, punching my ribs, punching my back. It also led to where I used to run away. And so that's what I used to do, like just run away and stuff like that. And he would take my clothes to where I was doing these exercises. I'd have no clothes, so I'd be butt-ass naked doing these exercises in the house. And even then, having enough, I'd still run away down the street butt-ass naked. So that's just the way of me trying to escape and whatnot. But like, it's just crazy looking back at it. I don't know why he'd employ those kind of antics or tactics. Even in reports that he thought he was doing what he thought was justifiable. Like I said, I think the system wasn't designed to teach foster parents, especially new foster parents, how to deal with a troubled kid, you know. And looking back at it, I probably deserved it. People say that's what a victim says, but I don't see myself as a victim. I see myself as a survivor. And at the end of the day, I was a knucklehead. I was very rebellious. I was a very angry child. So I get how that can be hard for someone trying to raise an individual, a child that's out of control. So I get that perspective. Spanking every now and then could be the best lesson. The last day of school that I came here I came in, black eye, bruises on my face, scratches on my face, and a fat lip, a bleeding lip. And the counselor told me, "Hey, look, I've been doing a bunch of stuff. You're gonna be talking to CPS, and you're not gonna go into that. You're not going back to your adoptive home." I said, "That's cool. I appreciate that." And then CPS got involved. They took me out of that home, out of school, and they immediately put me into a foster home, a therapeutic foster home off of Lakewood, off of 83rd Street. And so that was the end of that chapter of being in that adoptive home. And I think shortly after that, I ended up going to stay with my grandparents, which they had to go through some hoops and stuff at Pierce County, because that's where Steilacoom is, out of Pierce County. And I got to stay with my grandparents for about a year. In late '99, I came out here to live with my grandparents, who lived in that house over there. And yeah, I remember doing an article playing the Jenga with my grandparents. So yeah, that was cool time in my life. And then this area is pretty prominent. Drugs and gangs, especially down on 9th and Fern. It was pretty wild down there. African Vista is right down there. Cambridge Court down there. It's just wild. So it's a lot different nowadays, but back in the 90s, this is pretty much a hot spot too. So
Olympia wasn't a gang stronghold, but it lived in the shadows of ones, caught between Tacoma and Seattle, where established sets and drug networks were already rooted. What showed up locally wasn't organized turf warfare as much as fragment satellite crews, affiliates, and individuals moving up and down the I-5 corridor. It was less about colors and corners and more about what stayed hidden: quiet deals, backroom exchanges, and a drug trade that operated under the surface rather than out in the open.
Shortly after being involved with my older brothers in the drug trade and violence and victimizing the community, and just being a terror and a tyrant.
My name is Karen. I was JD's foster mom. I also worked for Thurston County Clerk's Office, Family Juvenile Court. My first impression was JD. I thought he was a very cute kid, great smile, very playful, a little mischievous. But my husband and I, we liked him a lot. We connected with him right away. His grandparents were really happy that he was with us and they got to be grandparents. They would pick him up on weekends. They would take him on outings, buy him his expensive clothes and his cologne that he liked so much. It was a good setup for him. When the kids got brought into our home, lots of times they came with their stuff in a black garbage bag, which was troubling. Their personal belongings were really important to them. And one of the boys had gotten into JD's stuff, and that caused a fight at the bus stop, and that would trigger some behaviors, touching his stuff. I mean, that was very important to him. When they decided they were going to move JD because of his fight, we had asked for a meeting with Catholic Community Services, and we had gone to their office, and they had a whole bunch of their people there, and we had, tried to get them to let him stay with us because he was doing so well, and they had told us that we really weren't educated and we couldn't make those decisions, and he was going to be moved, and I really feel like that was a downfall for him.
JD had been hanging out with the wrong crowd and getting into fights at school, but he was still unknown to law enforcement. This would all change one night in December of 2001 when JD and his friends committed 2 armed robberies.
Pretty much the exact location where the pizza man came through for a robbery. We were over here in Evergreen Vista, where the apartment complex party was, and then we had to come over here to drop off pizza.
When the pizza guy got there, he was pulled inside the apartment. He was robbed by JD and his friend for $100 and the pizza. Not long after that, JD, his friend Dennis, and a young girl walked in the convenience store on Cooper Point Road in Olympia. The group walked down some aisles and took food off the shelves, then walked up to the clerk counter. According to the local newspaper at the time, JD and his friends robbed the clerk for $100 and some food from the store shelves. When the clerk started to follow the group out to their car, one of them fired a shot off to scare the clerk as they were getting away. The convenience store clerk then ran back inside and called the Olympia police. After these 2 incidents, the sheriff's department had enough evidence to put a warrant out for the arrest of JD and Dennis for the 2 armed robberies in Olympia, and were actively looking for them.
My last days of freedom leading up to the standoff back in 2001, Izzy's apartments that I knew too well on the west side of Olympia. They're called Forest Glen, but we called it Ghetto Glen. It was a pretty wild living experience. Everything is pretty much segregated. You had the blacks up front, you had the white dudes in general area where I'm at right now, and you had the Mexicans over there. It was a pretty high trafficking area for drugs, trafficking for prostitution, and it was just wild, super gang infested. It was really bad to the point where law enforcement would stage outside at the auto mall.
15-year-old JD and 24-year-old Dennis were now on the run. A couple weeks later, the two friends showed up at D. Trey's mobile home park to use someone's laundry and get some rest when the police were tipped off that the two were located there. According to the Olympia newspaper, around 10:20 a.m., sheriff's deputies went looking for Dennis and JD and tracked them down in a trailer park in Lacey. When the sheriffs came to the door and confronted Dennis, he pulled out a gun and he put it to his head and threatened to kill himself. The newspaper said he then barricaded himself inside the trailer, and this is when the SWAT team was called in.
December 28, 2001, the cops tried to breach entry. And my brother shot at the police. They got back out because we had people actually in the trailer park. They vacated. They surrounded the house even more. They cut off the phone lines where it was a direct connection to where anytime you pick up the phone, the regular phone will go strictly to the 911 command center, hostage negotiation, and they try to give us food, but like fuck your food, because we've already heard stories of our previous friends who got caught in situations where they would lace food or drinks with a sleep agent to get you to be passed out. So we didn't take none of their offers for food or drinks. They even shut off the water, shut off electricity. They're doing everything they can to try to coach us out of the place, whatever. We also made sure that we kind of blocked off certain points in the living room because we know about concussion grenades. And so what those are is it's a flashbang where they breach a window, and then it's like, I'm not quite sure how much decibels, but it's enough to knock you out and gives them enough time to come in there and storm the place and apprehend you. So we're already familiar with a lot of that stuff. So actually I was 15 to experience some of this. They didn't push any they didn't put any of those devices inside the place, but looking around, like, holy shit, like, we're surrounded with a SWAT team, pretty intense. My brother at the time, he was out on bail for organized crime, a couple bank robberies and a potential murder that they had him under investigation with out of Wyoming, but he was out of bail. He was on bail out of Thurston County for organized crime, and he wasn't going back. And I looked up to him a lot, man. He taught me a lot about life and principles and, you know, how to be a man and not to do your own supply and stuff like that. And he didn't want to be a drug dealer. That wasn't what he was trying to be. He wanted to be a father for his kid. But he had to make money, you know, and like, he got drawn back into it. Not an excuse, it's just sometimes that's how it works sometimes. He had a tow truck company business. They had a cell phone company called Network Inc. By the Sampan. So when you start involved in businesses and stuff like that, and drug trafficking and stuff like that, they see how you can be involved in organized crime by washing money and making things look good or appear to look good. So I was involved in a lot of that stuff as a young kid. Got to see a lot of that. But anyways, he told me he wasn't going back to prison, and I understood what he meant by that, because the code was like, you choose your own time. And so he told me that it's easy to put a gun on somebody and pull the trigger, but when you really think about it, when it's time to pull it on yourself, that's when you become a man. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, because at the end of the day, like, it's easy to pull the trigger on somebody else to potentially end their life, but when you have to make that conscious decision to do it to yourself, that's when you look at life a little bit different. And that hit me. And then he asked me, he's like, would you be able to pull the trigger? I'm like, absolutely not. Brothers don't kill brothers, you know? And he's like, I figured as much. And so I wanted to go out the same way. I wanted to shoot at the police and like, fuck it. He's like, dude, you're young. You're not going to do much time. You're probably going to do a few years at best. Me, I'm never getting out. I'm looking at 30 plus years alone for organized crime and some other stuff. So like, I'll never see daylight again. So like, I don't want to be in that position. I'd rather choose my own time. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so after that, he kind of went down the hallway and then hesitated probably like, I don't know, 5 minutes, and then you hear the gunshot. And I already knew what he did. And so I was like, fuck, dude. The phone rang. Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah. Like, nothing. I'll be out in a minute. Just give me some time. He said, what was that shot? I said, my brother shot a round in the floor. And they're like, is everything good? I'm like, yeah, everything's cool. So after that, I opened up the door. They're all out front. And I was like, the reality settles in. Like, oh shit, dude, like, will I ever see daylight again? You know, like, is this a mistake? You know, like, and I know my brother, like, I know he chose his time, you know, so like, it is what it is. So then they tell me to walk down the steps backwards with my hands up, blah blah. You'll see a newspaper article, hopefully we can get, that you'll see me walking back with my hands, and you'll see a bunch of SWAT people in front of me. They finally get me in my in cuffs. They searched my shoe, they found a bullet, and our thing was, back in the day, the silver bullet was the bullet for yourself, so we always put that in the last on the bottom of the clip. He gave me that, and I thought I could be able to keep that because I was a kid, so I thought I hid it in my shoe, in my tongue. Nah, they stole that real quick. And then, hey man, why isn't your brother answering? I said, just give him some time, bro. He's looking at a lot of time. Like, give him some time. But to me, that was just a soft tactic because I want to make sure that, you know, who would want to come back out alive as a vegetable, doing life in prison, you know? So I just want to give him his peace.
Around 3 p.m., a gun was thrown out of the window, and the sheriffs were able to negotiate JD into coming out of the trailer.
They put me in a squad car, pulled me around back. They all surrounded, asked some questions, and I was just downplay it. Shortly after that, they said they had breached entry.
6 hours after they had first arrived, at 4 p.m., the SWAT team was finally able to get into the mobile home and found 24-year-old Dennis Dyer dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
And he was found dead with a gunshot wound to his head, and they asked me about it, and I said, well, it is what it is, you know, and they said he's dead. I'm like, all right, cool. So I know that's what he got, that's what he wanted, so I respected that. I don't look at him as a coward. He's done a lot of shit in life. I respect him as a man, and I understand. I frown on suicide to a degree to where, like, if you take your life over a female or take your life over stupid shit like depression, like, you are a coward. But when you're looking at life in prison, and I have friends to this day that have been shot by law enforcement because they refuse to go back to prison, I respect that and I understand that. You know, you choose your own time. Who wants to spend the rest of life in prison? So that's a reality that people don't understand. Nor do I want you to understand that. It's just a perspective and a belief system that we're ingrained with. Does it make it right? I don't know the answer to that. That's for you to decide, not me. That's just the way it was for us growing up. And till this day, I still have friends that, yeah, police assisted suicide, or they just take their own life in one form or another because they don't want to spend the rest of life in prison. So after that, I ended up getting sentenced to juvenile life, which means to the age of 21. I went to Maple Lane for a few months. One of my friends was being jumped. I helped him, where we assaulted an individual. And then I ended up being sent to Chelan, or Baker. I think it was Chelan. And then I was there for a few months. And then you're too violent, you're going to Green Hill.
Subscribe to our channel to not miss the next video.